The discovery shocked the quiet community of Millfield, a sleepy suburb just outside of Portland, Oregon. On the morning of April 17, 2023, sanitation workers noticed a suspicious tarp partially concealed in a wooded area behind the Oak Ridge apartments. What they found inside would send ripples of horror through the community and launch one of the most disturbing true crime stories of the year. Inside the tarp were the bodies of 29-year-old Sarah Mitchell and her 3-year-old daughter, Emma. Both had been strangled, their bodies showing signs of having been moved after death. The police were called immediately, and within hours, the peaceful neighborhood was transformed into a crime scene. I've been on the force for 20 years, and this ranks among the most chilling true crime stories I've ever encountered. Detective Marcus Reynolds would later tell reporters, "The calculated nature of it, the victims, it stays with you." What investigators didn't know that morning was that the killer wasn't some unknown predator who had invaded their community. She was already among them, 18-year-old Amber Lewis, a high school senior who lived just 3 doors down from the victims, a teenager who, by all accounts, was the quintessential girl next door. This is the story of how obsession turned deadly, how a teenage girl's infatuation with a married man led to the murders of his wife and child, and how her desperate attempt to dispose of their bodies ultimately led to her capture. Among the many true crime stories that have shocked the nation in recent years, this case stands out for its particularly disturbing elements: youth, calculation, and a chilling absence of remorse. The Mitchells had moved to Millfield just 4 months before the murders. Daniel Mitchell, 32, had accepted a position as an IT specialist at a local tech firm, prompting the family to relocate from Seattle. They chose the Oak Ridge apartments for its good schools and family-friendly reputation. Sarah was a part-time graphic designer who worked from home while caring for Emma. By all accounts, they were a happy family looking forward to building a new life. "They seemed so perfect," recalled neighbor Elaine Winters. "Always smiling, always together." Sarah was devoted to that little girl, and Daniel, well, he clearly adored them both. The Mitchells quickly integrated into the community. Sarah joined the apartment complex's book club, while Daniel occasionally played basketball with other residents at the community court. Emma was enrolled in a nearby preschool 3 mornings a week. They were, by all appearances, living the American dream. Amber Lewis had lived at Oak Ridge her entire life. Her parents, both working professionals, had raised her in apartment 305, just down the hall from where the Mitchells would move into apartment 308. Amber was in her senior year at Millfield High School, maintained a 3.8 GPA, and had been accepted to Oregon State University for the fall semester. She worked part-time at a local coffee shop and was described by teachers and neighbors as quiet, responsible, and mature for her age. "She was always so helpful," said Mrs. Gonzalez from apartment 302. "Would offer to carry my groceries, watched my cat when I went out of town. Never would have thought she was capable of, well, you know." What no one knew was that behind Amber's seemingly perfect exterior lurked a troubled young woman with a history of obsessive behavior. In middle school, she had become fixated on a female teacher, sending her dozens of letters and gifts until the school intervened. In her sophomore year of high school, she had stalked a senior boy, creating multiple fake social media accounts to monitor his activities. These incidents had been handled quietly, with therapy and school counseling, rather than any legal consequences. By the time the Mitchells moved in, Amber's obsessive tendencies had been dormant for nearly 2 years. Her therapist had noted in her files that Amber was showing significant improvement and had developed healthy coping mechanisms. No one could have predicted that the arrival of Daniel Mitchell would trigger a deadly relapse. The first meeting between Amber Lewis and Daniel Mitchell occurred on December 12, 2022, just 3 days after the Mitchell family moved in. Amber was returning from her shift at the coffee shop when she encountered Daniel struggling to carry boxes up the stairs. "Need a hand?" she asked, according to her later confession. Daniel gratefully accepted, and together they carried the remaining boxes to apartment 308. Sarah was inside, unpacking kitchen items while Emma napped. She thanked Amber warmly and offered her a cup of hot chocolate as thanks. This simple neighborly interaction would be the catalyst for the tragedy that followed. In her journal, later recovered by police, Amber wrote that same night, "Met the new neighbor today. Daniel. He has the most amazing eyes I've ever seen. When he smiled at me, I felt something I've never felt before. I know he felt it too. There was a moment when our hands touched, reaching for the same box. It was electric. His wife seems nice enough, but she doesn't understand him. I can tell." This entry marked the beginning of what psychologists who study obsession murder cases would later describe as a textbook case of erotomania, a delusional belief that another person, usually of higher social status or otherwise unattainable, is in love with the subject. Over the next few weeks, Amber engineered numerous accidental encounters with Daniel. She adjusted her schedule to be in the hallway when he left for work. She volunteered to collect mail for the entire floor so she could knock on his door. She even switched her coffee shop shifts to match the times Daniel usually stopped in for his morning coffee. Looking back, I should have noticed something was off, Daniel would later tell investigators. She was always there, always offering to help. But I just thought she was being neighborly. God, I wish I had seen it for what it was. By January 2023, Amber's journal entries had become increasingly focused on Daniel. She wrote about his habits, his preferences, conversations they'd had. She began to interpret normal politeness as signs of reciprocated interest. "He asked about my college plans today," she wrote on January 15th. "He cares about my future. He wants to know who I'll become. When I told him I was going to OSU, I saw disappointment in his eyes. He doesn't want me to go so far away. He can't say it, of course, not with her always watching." Unlike typical crime of passion stories where emotions erupt suddenly, this case showed a slow, calculated progression. Amber's fixation grew methodically, day by day, feeding on every interaction, no matter how insignificant. The transition from fantasy to reality occurred on February 10, 2023. Daniel had been struggling with a home office setup, and Amber, who had overheard him mentioning it to another neighbor, offered to help. She had taken computer classes and knew enough to assist with the basic networking issues he was having. Sarah was out with Emma at a Mommy and Me class, leaving Daniel and Amber alone in the apartment for nearly 2 hours. What exactly transpired during that time would later be disputed. According to Amber's account, this was when their relationship began. "It finally happened," her journal entry from that night read. "We were alone, and he couldn't pretend anymore. He kissed me in his living room, right under the photo of her. He said he's never felt this way before, that he made a mistake marrying Sarah, that he feels trapped. He said we need to be careful, that no one can know yet. I promised him I would wait, that I understand the complications. He's worth waiting for." Daniel's version was dramatically different. In his statement to police, he insisted that nothing inappropriate occurred. "I was grateful for her help with the Wi-Fi setup. We talked about her college plans while she worked. When she was done, I thanked her and she left. That was it. There was absolutely no romantic interaction." However, text messages recovered from Amber's phone showed that some form of communication had been established. On February 12th, she texted Daniel, "Had a great time the other day. Let me know if you need any more technical support." Daniel replied, "Thanks again for your help. Everything's working great now." This seemingly innocent exchange would be the first of hundreds of text messages between them over the next 2 months. While most of Daniel's responses were brief and professional, Amber's became increasingly intimate and suggestive. By early March, the nature of their relationship had changed. Security camera footage from the apartment building showed Daniel entering Amber's apartment on March 3rd, while her parents were at work. He stayed for approximately 45 minutes. Similar visits occurred on March 7th, March 15th, and March 26th. During police interrogation, Daniel eventually admitted to the affair. "It was a terrible mistake," he said, his voice breaking. "She was persistent, and I was weak. I never stopped loving my wife and daughter. I never wanted to hurt them. I was planning to end it with Amber. I told her that, just days before it happened." Cell phone records confirmed that on April 12th, 5 days before the murders, Daniel had texted Amber, "We need to talk. This isn't right. It has to stop. Amber's response was chilling in its simplicity. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Like many obsession murder cases, this one began with an infatuation that quickly spiraled out of control. What made this case particularly disturbing was Amber's ability to maintain her outward appearance of normalcy while her internal world became increasingly detached from reality. As investigators pieced together the timeline leading up to the murders, they discovered that Amber's plan had been developing for weeks. Her internet search history revealed queries that should have raised red flags had anyone seen them. March 10. How to tell if someone is being poisoned. March 17. Untraceable poisons household items. March 25th. How long does it take someone to suffocate? April 6th. How to make someone disappear. April 8th. How deep to bury a body so dogs can't find it. April 14. How long before missing persons are declared dead. This teenage killer true crime case demonstrates how seemingly normal adolescents can harbor deadly intentions while maintaining a facade of innocence. Amber continued attending school, working her shifts at the coffee shop, and even attending college orientation at OSU, all while methodically planning the elimination of what she perceived as the obstacles to her happiness with Daniel. Her journal entries from this period show a disturbing detachment from the reality of what she was contemplating. April 5th. Sarah doesn't deserve him. She doesn't appreciate how special he is. And that child, she takes up all his time and energy. They're holding him back from the life he should have, the life we should have together. Sometimes removing obstacles is the kindest thing you can do for someone you love. April 10. I've been watching their routines. Sarah takes Emma to the park every Tuesday and Thursday morning. Daniel works late on Wednesdays. The walls in this building are thick enough that no one would hear anything. I could make it quick, merciful even. Then it would just be the two of us, the way it's supposed to be. April 15th. 2 more days. I have everything I need now, the gloves, the rope, the tarp. Daniel texted that he'll be at a work conference all day Wednesday. It's perfect timing. By the time he gets home, they'll be gone, and I'll be there to comfort him, to help him through his grief. And eventually, when enough time has passed, we can be together openly. He'll understand why I did it. He'll be grateful. Forensic psychologist Dr. Eleanor Simmons, who later analyzed Amber's writings, noted, "What's particularly disturbing about this case is the complete lack of moral struggle in her planning. There's no evidence that she grappled with the wrongness of her intentions. In her mind, Sarah and Emma weren't people with their own right to life. They were simply obstacles to be removed." This love affair murder case began to take its final form on the evening of April 16th, when Amber made her last journal entry. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, our real life begins. Wednesday, April 17th, 2023, began like any other day in the Mitchell household. Daniel left for his conference in Seattle at 5:30 a.m., expecting to return late that evening. Security footage showed him kissing Sarah goodbye at their apartment door, then bending down to kiss sleeping Emma's forehead in her bedroom before departing. Sarah's phone records show she sent several text messages that morning, to her mother about Emma's upcoming birthday, to a client about a design project, and to a friend about meeting for lunch the following week. At 9:17 a.m., she posted a photo on Instagram of Emma eating breakfast, with the caption, "Pancake Wednesday with my little princess." This would be the last public trace of Sarah and Emma Mitchell alive. According to the timeline established by investigators, Amber waited until approximately 10:30 a.m. to make her move. She had called in sick to school that day, telling her parents she had a migraine. They had both left for work by 8 a.m., leaving her alone in the apartment. Security camera footage from the hallway showed Amber approaching the Mitchells' door at 10:28 a.m., carrying what appeared to be a plate of cookies. She knocked, and Sarah opened the door. The two appeared to have a brief, friendly conversation before Sarah stepped aside to let Amber in. The door closed at 10:31 a.m. What happened inside the apartment was later reconstructed based on forensic evidence and Amber's eventual confession. According to her statement, she had brought the cookies as a pretense, claiming they were a thank you for Sarah's kindness since they'd moved in. "We sat at the kitchen table. Amber told detectives. Emma was playing in the living room with her toys. Sarah and I were talking about college. She was telling me about her own college experience. She was being nice. That made it harder, but I knew what I had to do. While Sarah was distracted getting milk for the cookies, Amber removed a length of rope from her pocket. When Sarah turned back toward the table, Amber attacked, looping the rope around her neck from behind. She struggled more than I expected, Amber said in her confession, her tone disturbingly matter-of-fact. She knocked over a chair and was making these gasping sounds. Emma started crying and ran over. She was pulling at my leg, screaming for her mommy. I hadn't planned on doing them at the same time, but I didn't have a choice anymore. Forensic evidence confirmed that Sarah fought hard for her life. Her fingernails contained Amber's skin cells, and the apartment showed signs of a struggle: overturned furniture, broken dishes, and a knocked-over lamp. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation, with the rope still embedded in her neck when the body was discovered. After subduing Sarah, Amber turned her attention to Emma, who was by then screaming and trying to wake her mother. According to Amber's confession, she used a pillow from the couch to smother the child. It didn't take long, she said. She was so small. The medical examiner confirmed that Emma Mitchell died of asphyxiation, likely within minutes of her mother's death. The time of death for both victims was estimated to be between 10:45 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. This teenage killer true crime investigation revealed a level of brutality that shocked even veteran detectives. The fact that Amber could transition from friendly conversation to murder in a matter of minutes, and that she could kill a child who posed no physical threat to her, spoke to a profound disturbance in her psychological makeup. With Sarah and Emma dead, Amber faced the problem of what to do with their bodies. Her original plan, as detailed in her journal, had been to make it appear that Sarah had taken Emma and left Daniel, a not uncommon scenario in troubled marriages. She had even gone so far as to practice Sarah's handwriting to leave a convincing note. However, the struggle with Sarah had left evidence of violence that couldn't be easily concealed. Blood from Sarah's broken nose had spattered on the walls and carpet. There were obvious signs of a struggle throughout the apartment. Amber's new plan was to remove the bodies and clean up the scene before Daniel returned. Security footage showed Amber leaving the Mitchell apartment at 1:42 p.m., returning to her own apartment briefly, then coming back to the Mitchell apartment at 1:57 p.m. carrying cleaning supplies. She remained inside until 7:23 p.m., when hallway cameras captured her struggling to drag a large tarp-wrapped bundle toward the service elevator. "I waited until it was getting dark," she told investigators. "I thought the building would be emptier then, with people having dinner. The tarp was heavier than I expected. I could barely move it." Amber managed to get the bodies to her car, a 2015 Honda Civic, parked in the apartment complex's underground garage. Security footage showed her making 3 trips between 7:23 p.m. and 8:40 p.m., struggling each time with the weight of her burden. "I had to separate them," she explained during her confession. "I couldn't lift them together." This detail, that Amber had to dismember the tarp to transport mother and child separately, added another layer of horror to an already gruesome crime. By 9:15 p.m., Amber had loaded both bodies into her trunk and back seat. Her plan, as she later admitted, was to drive them to a remote location in Mount Hood National Forest, where she had previously hiked with her family. She believed the dense forest would conceal the bodies long enough for decomposition to obscure evidence of the crime. What Amber hadn't counted on was her own inexperience with criminal behavior. As with many body disposal criminal cases, the perpetrator made critical errors that led to discovery. In her haste to clean the Mitchell apartment, she had done a superficial job. Luminol would later reveal blood traces throughout the kitchen and living room. She had also left one of her earrings under the couch, apparently lost during the struggle with Sarah. Most critically, she hadn't considered the weight and awkwardness of the bodies. After driving only a few miles from the apartment complex, she pulled into a wooded area behind a strip mall to readjust the tarp, which was shifting in her vehicle. It was there that a security guard on patrol noticed the suspicious activity and called the police. By the time officers arrived, Amber had abandoned her car and fled on foot, leaving behind the partially concealed bodies. The vehicle registration quickly led police to the Lewis family apartment, where they found Amber attempting to wash blood from her clothing. She seemed surprised when we showed up, Officer Tanya Rodriguez recalled, like she couldn't believe things hadn't gone according to her plan. There was no crying, no remorse. She just asked if she could finish putting her laundry in the dryer before we took her in. The discovery of Sarah and Emma Mitchell's bodies launched an intensive investigation that would reveal the full extent of Amber's obsession and calculation. Detectives secured warrants for both the Mitchell and Lewis apartments, as well as for all electronic devices belonging to Amber, Sarah, and Daniel. This ranks among the most chilling true crime stories I've encountered in my career, said Detective Reynolds during a press conference 3 days after the murders. The level of planning, the cold-blooded nature of the killings, and the youth of the perpetrator make this case particularly disturbing. The evidence against Amber mounted quickly. In addition to the security footage and physical evidence from the scene, investigators discovered her journal, which provided a detailed account of her obsession with Daniel and her plans to eliminate Sarah and Emma. Her internet search history revealed not only queries about murder methods, but also searches for how to comfort a grieving husband and how long to wait before dating a widower. She had researched life insurance policies and Oregon laws regarding inheritance after sudden death. Text messages between Amber and Daniel confirmed their affair, but also showed that Daniel had been trying to end the relationship. In the week before the murders, he had sent several messages indicating his guilt and desire to recommit to his family. April 10th. This was a mistake. I love my wife and daughter. I can't keep doing this. April 12th. We need to talk. This isn't right. It has to stop. April 14. I'm not going to respond to messages like this anymore. It's over, Amber. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression, but my family comes first. Amber's responses showed increasing desperation. April 10. You don't mean that. I know how unhappy you've been. We're meant to be together. April 12th. Don't worry. I'll take care of everything. April 14. You'll see things differently soon. I promise. Everything will be perfect. Daniel Mitchell was initially treated as a suspect, as is common in cases where a spouse is murdered. However, his alibi for the day of the murders was solid. Security footage from the Seattle Conference Center showed him present throughout the day, and his cell phone GPS data confirmed his location. When detectives informed him of his wife and daughter's murders, his reaction was captured on interrogation room video. His collapse into gut-wrenching sobs, his repeated questions of why them, and his physical illness upon learning of Amber's involvement convinced investigators of his innocence in the planning of the crimes. His grief was profound and genuine, Detective Reynolds later testified. There was no indication that he had any knowledge of or involvement in Amber's plans. As the investigation progressed, a more complete picture of Amber Lewis emerged. Interviews with classmates, teachers, and former friends revealed a young woman who had become increasingly isolated over the past year. Several mentioned her tendency toward obsessive behavior, though none had recognized the dangerous extent of it.